There comes a moment in life, and maybe it crept in quietly, when you notice your grown children don't listen the way they used to. You raised them. You sacrificed for them. You were their compass, their safety, their anchor. And now? They roll their eyes at your advice. They interrupt. They dismiss your experience like it holds no weight. And that shift, that quiet unraveling of respect, hurts. Maybe you've caught yourself sitting in silence, unsure whether it's worth speaking up anymore. Or maybe you've snapped back, trying to remind them, I'm still your mother, I still matter. But here's the hard truth. Fighting for their respect won't bring it back. Getting angry, pleading, sacrificing even more, it only deepens the imbalance. So today, I want to offer something different, something that doesn't involve arguments, guilt, or resentment. 6 actions, simple but powerful, that can quietly reshape how your children see you. These aren't tricks. They're shifts in posture, presence, and boundaries that say, I respect myself, and I expect the same from you. Some of these steps might surprise you. They might feel uncomfortable at first, but stay with me, because what's on the other side is not just your children's respect. It's your own sense of peace. You've spent your life pouring love into others. Now it's time to reclaim the space you've always deserved. Let's begin. One of the most common and quiet traps mothers fall into later in life is this. We start chasing our children's approval. It doesn't start that way, of course. It begins with small things. You go out of your way to help. You change your schedule. You say yes, even when you're tired, uncomfortable, or just need rest. You think, if I show up for them enough, they'll see me, appreciate me, love me like before. But here's the hard truth. The more you chase their approval, the less they respect you. Respect doesn't come from bending over backwards. It comes from self-respect, from knowing your worth and holding steady in it, even if they don't immediately see it. I remember a woman named Carolyn from Virginia. In her 50s, she was bold, independent, a leader in her field. But as her kids grew up and had families of their own, something changed. She started letting them decide everything, holidays, family gatherings, even what she was allowed to talk about. She said yes when she wanted to say no. She swallowed her truth just to keep the peace. She let them talk over her, correct her, ignore her. I just want to be close to them, she told me once. But the closeness came with a price, her voice. Her children didn't become more connected. They became more dismissive. Because what she thought was love, they read as weakness. The first shift Carolyn made was this. She stopped trying so hard. She said no when she meant it. She shared her thoughts calmly, even if they didn't agree. She took back control of her time, and slowly they noticed. She wasn't angry, she wasn't cold, she was clear. And that clarity became respect. If you've been putting your needs last, if you've been bending, shrinking, or silencing yourself, hoping they'll love you more, take a breath. You don't need to prove your worth. You need to stand in it. Because the moment you do, your children will stop seeing someone who's always trying to please, and start seeing a woman who knows exactly who she is. When your children speak to you with disrespect, when they cut you off, correct you, or treat your voice like background noise, the instinct is to fight back, to remind them who you are, to list every sacrifice, to raise your voice until they finally hear you. But here's the honest truth. Arguing for respect rarely wins it. It just creates more distance, more noise, more moments you replay in your mind at night, wishing they'd gone differently. Respect doesn't come from volume. It comes from presence. I once met a woman named Darlene, a retired nurse in Missouri. She had raised 3 sons with unwavering love, but now, as adults, they often cut her short, joked about her old-fashioned ideas, and brushed off her advice. At first she argued, she snapped, She pleaded. She tried to make them see, "You don't talk to me this way. I'm your mother." But it only escalated things. They rolled their eyes, changed the subject, called her too sensitive. So one day, Darlene tried something new. She stopped explaining herself. She stopped debating. When one son interrupted her, she paused and simply said, "I'll continue when you're ready to listen." When another mocked her opinion, she replied, "You're free to disagree, but I won't be spoken to like that." She didn't yell. She didn't shut down. She stood firm and calm, like a tree rooted deep in the ground. And slowly, they changed. They didn't become perfect, but they paused more, listened longer, chose their words with a little more care. Rise, speak slow, speak clear, speak once. And remember, real power doesn't need to shout. It simply holds its ground. There's a quiet ache many mothers carry, not anger, not resentment, just a longing to feel seen, to feel wanted, needed, included. And when that doesn't come, when calls go unanswered, visits grow short, or holidays are filled with excuses, it's easy to feel like something's wrong with you. But here's the truth that frees you. You don't need their love to be whole. Of course you want it. You gave them everything. You still think about their favorite meals, their allergies, their old heartbreaks. That kind of love doesn't just shut off. But when you start depending on their affection to feel valuable, you hand over your power, and they feel it. They feel that emotional need, that silent pull. And instead of drawing them closer, it often pushes them away. I once knew a woman named Lucille, a widow from North Carolina. She had raised 2 daughters with deep devotion, and after her husband passed, she quietly began leaning on them more than she realized. She called, often, left long voicemails, mentioned how quiet the house was, how much she missed them, how empty dinner felt without someone to talk to. Her intentions were pure, but over time her daughters started answering less. They felt pressure, guilt, and the relationship began to crack under it. Until one day, Lucille changed course. She didn't stop loving. She stopped reaching from emptiness. She joined a walking group, started learning watercolor painting, volunteered once a week at the local hospital, and she stopped calling first. And then, something beautiful happened. Her daughters began calling again, not out of guilt, but out of interest. They saw her living, not waiting, thriving, not surviving. Lucille hadn't become less loving. She'd become more full of herself. In the best way. If you're feeling unappreciated, forgotten, or emotionally tied to their responses, take a step inward. Reconnect with your own joy, your rhythm, your peace. Because when your children see that you don't need them to feel complete, they begin to respect you more, not as someone who waits, but as someone who leads with quiet, radiant independence. Let's say it plainly. People treat you the way you teach them to, and that includes your children. If they interrupt you, dismiss you, or guilt you into decisions, and you let it slide, you're showing them what's acceptable, not because you're weak, not because you don't care, but because, as a mother, you've spent decades making peace more important than pride. But here's the truth. Many women learn too late. Love without boundaries turns into burnout, and kindness without limits is often mistaken for permission. I once met a woman named Jeanette, a retired accountant in upstate New York. She had always been known as the reliable one in the family. Need help with rent? Call mom. Need babysitting last minute? She'll figure it out. Need a place to vent, even disrespectfully? She'd listen, quietly. But slowly, Jeanette began to feel like a doormat with a smile. Her time wasn't hers. Her voice was ignored. And worst of all, she realized she'd taught her children that her needs didn't matter. Until the day she drew a line. It wasn't a dramatic fight. She didn't slam doors or cut ties. She simply said calmly and clearly, "I won't be spoken to like that. I'm happy to help, but not without a thank you. I'm unavailable that day. Let's find another time." At first, they pushed back, called her sensitive, said she was changing, and she was, for the better. Because Jeanette had learned, a boundary isn't a wall, it's a doorway to mutual respect. If your children raise their voice, pause the conversation. If they guilt you, name it gently. If they ignore your time, reclaim it. You don't need to justify your worth, but you do need to protect your peace. Because every time you hold a boundary, you teach them something sacred. I love you, but I love me too. And when they see that, they may resist at first, but eventually, they'll rise to meet the standard you set. As mothers, we give. It's who we are. We give our time, our energy, our listening ear, our food, our home, our hands, our hearts, again and again, often without being asked, and sometimes without being thanked. But here's a truth we don't like to say out loud. When you keep giving to people who don't appreciate it, you're not building love. You're building entitlement. I once knew a woman named Barbara, a retired school principal in Oregon. Her 3 adult children knew they could call her for anything, and she would say yes. Need money? She'd wire it by evening. Need a sitter? She'd cancel her plans. Need a ride? She'd drop everything. At first it felt like love. Then it started to feel like obligation and then expectation. They stopped saying thank you. They stopped asking. They assumed. And when Barbara finally said no, they acted offended, even angry. That was her turning point. She realized her giving had lost its sacredness. It had become a reflex, not a choice. So she pulled back, lovingly, firmly, quietly. She started saying things like, "I'd love to help, but I already have something planned. I can't this week, but I'm cheering you on. Let me think about that and get back to you." And at first, they didn't know what to do with this new version of their mother. But over time, they began to appreciate her again. Why? Because her generosity became a gift again, not a guarantee. Because she showed them that her help came from love, not guilt. And love deserves gratitude, not assumption. So if you're feeling taken for granted, pause. Look at what you're giving and ask yourself, are they respecting it or expecting it? Because the moment you stop giving out of habit and start giving from choice, your worth begins to shine again. And when your children realize your support has boundaries, they stop leaning on you out of laziness and start treasuring you out of respect. Here's a quiet truth many women don't say out loud. After the kids are grown, you're left wondering, who am I now? You've spent years being the mother, the fixer, the planner, the foundation, and you did it with love. But when they move on, as they should, and you keep orbiting around them, they don't see you as someone strong and centered. They see you as someone waiting, and that, slowly, chips away at their respect. I once met a woman named Sharon in Arizona, widowed at 68, with 3 adult kids scattered across the country. At first, she made them her world. She texted daily, called constantly, asked about their lives, offered advice, hinted for visits, and little by little, they drifted. Not because they didn't love her, but because it felt like too much. Then one day Sharon had a shift, not out of bitterness, out of wisdom. She stopped waiting. She joined a book club, started painting again, something she hadn't done since her 20s. She even planned a solo trip to Maine to see the fall leaves. And something surprising happened. Her kids started calling her, not out of guilt, out of curiosity. "Mom, where are you this weekend? Send us pictures. "You sound so happy lately." Because now they saw her not just as mom, but as a whole person, someone with rhythm, with joy, with purpose beyond being needed. And that, my friend, is magnetic. If you've been waiting on your children to make life feel full again, pause, turn inward. Ask yourself, what have I always wanted to explore, but never gave myself permission to? Because when you start living fully, not just existing quietly, you reclaim a part of yourself that was never lost, just waiting. And when your children see that you're no longer circling their world, they begin to orbit yours, drawn by the gravity of your joy. If you've made it this far, I want to say something simple and from the heart. You deserve respect, not just as a mother, not just because of what you've given, but because of who you are. And if your children have forgotten that, don't spend your energy begging them to remember. Instead, shift your energy inward and start living in a way that reminds them who you've always been. Let's go back together one more time. You stopped chasing their approval and started standing in your own worth. You led with calm presence instead of arguments. You let go of emotional dependence and found peace in your own company. You drew boundaries, not to punish, but to protect your peace. You stopped giving where there was no gratitude and let your yes mean something again. You built a life beyond them, not to leave them behind, but to show them how to keep moving forward. And what happens when you live this way? Something powerful. Your children start to look at you differently. They may not say it right away. They may not even realize what's changed, but they'll feel it. They'll see a woman who commands respect, not with anger, but with clarity, not with control, but with quiet strength. They'll realize that your love was never about sacrifice. It was about presence. And that presence is still here, just stronger, wiser, more whole than ever before. So if today felt like a wake-up call, or maybe a soft nudge from the universe, let this be the moment you come home to yourself. You don't need to wait for anyone's permission. You don't need to apologize for growing, because the most powerful way to be respected is to live like someone who already is, and you are.